Hello folks, Abdul here. Today is the 1st of November 2019. Today we're going to talk about more political strife, this time continuing the Lebanon protests from where we left off in a previous video that I've made called Protests in MENA and LATAM, basically meaning Middle East and North America, more specifically in this case Lebanon, and you got more protests happening in Chile. But today we're going to focus into the Middle East. We're going to focus on Lebanon, or what's happened there. We're also going to talk about Pakistan and what's happening there too, especially with Kashmir as well. So, first link on the agenda. If you want to catch up, basically, you can watch this video and learn more about what's happening in Lebanon and elsewhere, or rather what's happened earlier in October. But anyway, that's that. Yeah. Next link, we can go straight to, guess what's happened? Saad Hariri has resigned, and Al-Jazeera's, one of the authors, Timur Azadi, has written an article here talking about, excuse me, about what's basically going to happen there. And on top of that, Timur Azadi is talking about what they're going to do next, or what he or she thinks is going to happen next. But anyway, enough of me just blabbering on in a somewhat incoherent fashion. I'll just read out this article to you. So here goes. With the recent resignation of the now caretaker Prime Minister Saad Hariri amid unprecedented protests, Lebanon's entering a phase of political wrangling in which Hezbollah and its allies will be decisive. Excuse me. Hariri resigned on Tuesday, saying that he is responding to the will of the Lebanese folks, who for almost 2 weeks had taken to the streets in massive protests, calling for the end of the country's confessional political system and for corrupt politicians to be held accountable. Protesters want the caretaker government to be replaced with a cabinet of independent experts who can lead Lebanon out of a deepening financial crisis, secure basic services such as electricity and water, and create new non-sectarian electoral law. Though most who have taken to the streets don't want to see a return of Hariri, the 49-year-old remains the most likely candidate to lead the next government due to support amongst a number of political groups and much of the international community. And while he saw the size of his parliamentary bloc reduced by about a third in the last year's polls, Hariri is still the single most popular politician amongst Lebanon's Sunnis, important in a country where the Prime Minister must be Sunni, the Speaker of Parliament Shia, and the President a Maronite Christian. I think it's clear Hariri should head the next government, but it can't be the same kind of government. It must be cleaner, lighter politically, and more professional. Veteran politician Marwan Hamadeh told Al Jazeera. And Hamadeh, who's a long-time Hariri ally, is currently a member of parliament in the bloc of the Progressive Socialist Party, PSP, which is headed by Druze leader Walid Jumblat. Every group should put a bit of water in the wine, starting with Hezbollah and Lebanese President Michel Aoun, so that we reach consensus and shelter Lebanon from the impending financial crisis and start a reforms process that would satisfy the masses who have been demonstrating, he said. Hariri's resignation came after he said that he had reached a dead end in negotiations with parties on the shape of a new government. Hassan Nasrallah, who is the head of Hezbollah, flat out opposed any change in government, while Aoun insisted that the Foreign Minister Gebran Bassil, a controversial figure who has been the prime target of protesters, remain part of it. Reuters reported that a political advisor to Nasrallah advised Hariri against giving in to the protesters, telling him, "We're next to you, steel yourself." By resigning without any agreements in place, Hariri defied both Aoun and Hezbollah, a fact which may complicate the formation of a new government. For a government to be formed, the President must set a date for binding consultations with MPs, and at that point, MPs head up to the presidential palace in Baghdad, just outside the capital Beirut, and inform Aoun who they would like to see as PM. Based on who the majority of MPs support for the post, the President then designates the Prime Minister to form a new government. But while he can count on the votes of his 20 MPs, as well as the 9 MPs of his allies in the PSP and the 15 in the Lebanese forces, Hariri will need some backing from political rivals who control more than half of the 128-seat legislature. This means that he'll need to get the votes of the groups he defied with his resignation. Hezbollah and its allies, including the Amal movement and Aoun's Free Patriotic movement, together control at least 67 seats. And to get the ball rolling, Aoun must call for consultations, but he has so far not done so. On Thursday, he said that he was making necessary efforts to facilitate the process before setting a date. There are 3 main scenarios being floated for the shape a new government could take on. The first and most likely is one headed by Hariri, with independent figures and experts phoning in order to satisfy the street. I think that if we see the President call for consultation in the next 48 to 72 hours, it's likely to be Hariri. Sami Attallah, the director of the Lebanese Center for Policy Studies, told Al-Jazeera the prospect of being Hariri is, I think, something that everyone will be thinking very carefully about, he said, alluding to the caretaker PM's international standing. Excuse me. Hariri inherited strong ties with Western nations, particularly France, from his father, former PM Rafik Hariri, who was assassinated in 2005. It was France that organised an international conference known as CEDRE in April 2018, bringing together mainly European nations as well as the World Bank to pledge $11 billion in soft loans to Lebanon for infrastructural projects. These funds are being viewed in Lebanon as a lifeline for a country nearing economic and financial collapse, and Hariri has been the main link with the nations who pledged the sum. Hariri's resignation on its own has made accessing the said refunds a very remote dream, Hamadeh said. Appointing someone other than him could be the nail on the coffin. And additionally, the presence of a pro-Western figure such as Hariri at the head of a government has also shielded Lebanon from collectively paying the price of increasing US sanctions on Hezbollah, which is backed by Iran. This is why the second scenario, a government appointed by Hezbollah and its allies, could spell doom for Lebanon, according to some. At this delicate financial moment, that might be very messy for us, Attallah said. And a third scenario, the formation of an independent government of experts, headed by an independent, is the one that would satisfy protesters. Yet it's perhaps the least likely, due to the fact that it would exclude established political parties. And while the shape of the new government is important, the time it takes to form it is equally of essence. Hariri's now caretaker cabinet took just under 9 months to form due to the political wrangling between parties, and it lasted just about as long, 9 months, minus a few days. Lebanon doesn't have that luxury of time anymore. High debt, stagnant economic growth, and decreasing inflows of remittances, a vital lifeline, have put the country's finances under increasing strain. The central bank governor Riyad Salameh recently said that collapse was just a few days away. Before walking back those comments, we better see something very quickly, Attallah said. If not, then we are plunging. The TLDR to all this crap is, if you don't assemble a government, expect more trouble. And apparently, Hezbollah has been, well, I'd say, excuse me, Hezbollah has been mentioned a few times here as well. So, yeah, that's all I'm going to say on that matter. Besides, yeah, this is what's grabbed my attention, to be honest with you. This paragraph here for some, for some obvious, well, one obvious reason is that, as I mentioned in the previous video, Lebanon is possibly targeted as part of Wesley Clark's speech on the countries that are going to get targeted. Brad Hammer's hinted that at me in the earlier video as well. So, this is one of those events that needs a very good paying attention to. Basically you need to keep a close eye on it just to see how it all unfolds. But yeah, speaking of that, another article here from thenational.ae. US Lebanon urgently needs government with reforms to avert crisis. I'll just read this one as well. So here goes. The popular protests that have rocked Lebanon since October 16th is forcing the resignation of Saad Hariri on Tuesday are a cause of both hope and anxiety in the Trump administration. A senior US official found the developments in Lebanon called the upheaval remarkable, while also voicing a, quote, concern over stability, end quote, of the country as protest strikes and the partial ban closures drag into week 2. In Washington's view, the protest that was sparked reportedly by a WhatsApp tax and similar economic and corruption problems are a, quote, remarkable development, end quote. The people are speaking up clearly and have articulated their demands in a non-sectarian, peaceful way. Okay. They have largely demonstrated national unity, that they want a clean government that is accountable, undertakes reform and ends corruption, the senior official told the National on condition of, anonymity. As the political debate heats up in Beirut over the formation of the next cabinet, the official maintained that the US government is indifferent on how Lebanon gets to such government. He added, "This is a decision of the Lebanese people. We're supporting the legitimate demands and the principles that whatever government comes next should be focused on accomplishing these goals in order to save Lebanon from an economic crisis. But when asked about the possibility of the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah forming a one-sided government with the majority coalition it has in the parliament, the US senior official expressed skepticism. Oh God damn it! Okay. The US senior official expressed skepticism. Hezbollah and its allies, amongst them President Michel Aoun of the Free Patriotic Movement, hold a 71-seat majority in the Lebanese parliament. But the US official says that even if Hezbollah and the FPM decide to form such a government, it won't be capable of reform. An extended void or a dragged-on process is a cause of concern. We are concerned about stability of Lebanon, but Lebanon will never be able until there's reforms. The practices of the last Hariri government has destabilized the country, the US official said. The Trump administration has been pushing for reform since the CEDAW conference hosted by France in April 2018 pledged more than $11 billion in aid for Lebanon if it undertakes a set of economic, fiscal and institutional changes. Since April 2018, Lebanon has had the CEDAW package. All they had to do is reform, but the government couldn't, the senior US official said. Now Washington is hoping that the next cabinet will, and is hinging US support on tangible reforms taking place. We'll support Lebanon when it takes the decision to reform. No one is going to bail out Lebanon, the official said. Another element of instability is the recent tension on the Lebanon-Israel border in the south. 2 attacks on Israeli drones on October 23rd, and today were reported since the protest started. Still, the US senior official didn't expect a military escalation. No one wants a war despite the incidents we're seeing at the border, he said. The US, for the time being, is trying to emphasize the local and spontaneous drive of these protests without intervening in such process. It's also stressing the need to protect the peaceful nature of the protests. Mike Pompeo calling upon Lebanon's army and security services this week to continue to ensure the rights and safety of the protesters. I'm just thinking right now. I'm not. If I was to try and look into this thoroughly, or try and think about it thoroughly, I should say, there's going to be Lebanon has too much on its plate as it is, and if the next government comes in and doesn't do a better job, but I think they've got the next government that does come in is going to have more issues on its hands than the previous one has. Not to mention the US being weirded out whenever they hear Hezbollah, so gee, I wonder why that's the case. And then 2 articles on Sputnik News. Well, one of them basically talking about, oh yeah, there's going to be more chaos if protests continue, yada yada yada. And then this one here, Saudi Arabia is apparently calling for, well, it's supposed to refrain from holding protests once he actually leaves proper. But I'll just read, it's a short article, might as well just read it anyway. So, Saad Hariri, who resigned from the position of Lebanon's Prime Minister amid mass anti-government protests, called on the supporters of his future moving party to refrain from holding demonstrations and to work together with the military and security forces. Media reported later on Wednesday that Hariri's supporters were gathering in various spots across Beirut. I thank everyone for their solidarity, and once again I'm asking the future movement to refrain from rallying and to work together with the army and security forces. This is currently our common goal for the sake of preserving calm and avoiding provocations, Hariri wrote on Twitter late on Wednesday. He announced his resignation late on Tuesday, which prompted a stop in the mass protests that rocked Lebanon. The demonstrators blocked roads and cleared off barricades in Beirut. The majority of schools announced the resumption of classes beginning on Thursday. Banks in their turn are ready to resume operations on Friday. On Wednesday, President Michel Aoun asked Hariri to stay on as interim PM to allow a new government to form after his cabinet stepped down, and later that day the citizens reportedly returned to the streets, calling on the authorities to meet all their demands. The government targeted security measures in the areas where the protesters were gathering. The rallies in Lebanon have been underway for nearly 2 weeks. They are sparked by the authorities' plan to introduce tax on online calls, basically VoIP services, voice over internet protocol services like Skype and WhatsApp. Then the measure was subsequently scrapped, but still the protests continued, and an acute economic crisis and low living standards, which Aoun said were a result of an economic blockade against Lebanon. Well, he's calling for peace, and I don't blame him. Especially when you see protests around the world. And now protests in developing countries usually lead to more havoc than they do peace. And on that note, one last article on Lebanon. Here's one. As I've said. Guess who's getting the blame on this one? US intervention, root cause of crisis in Lebanon. Hezbollah parliamentary bloc. Clearly no love lost there, that's for sure. Might as well just read the whole damn article like I usually do. So, seems that in itself is, we're off to an interesting start here. So, the parliamentary bloc of the Lebanese Hezbollah resistance movement says that US intervention in Lebanon is the root cause of the ongoing political crisis in the West Asian country. The loyalty to the resistance bloc at the Lebanon parliament made the remarks in a televised statement released on Thursday, saying, "We condemn US intervention in Lebanon, which is the root cause of the current chaos." The statement then touched on the resignation of Saad al-Hariri after a spate of street protests engulfed Beirut, saying that his resignation wasted the time needed to implement the package of reforms widely seen as fundamental to steer the cash-strapped Arab country out of an economic collapse. So in other words, the US is getting the blame for Lebanese issues, Saad Hariri for being forced to resign basically, and thus stifling the political stability of the country. especially when it comes to engineering their ways out of an economic and financial crisis. But anyway, let's continue. The loyalty to the resistance bloc further stated that Hariri's decision to step down also wasted the time required in order to approve the 2020 state budget. We hope that binding parliamentary consultations will follow their normal course in a bid to form a government. We call on the security services and the army to carry out all their responsibilities to ensure the security of citizens and not to leave them unprotected, the statement added. Hezbollah's parliamentary wing then called on the governor of Lebanon's central bank, Riyad Salameh, to take practical measures to prevent an economic collapse. Hariri's resignation was, quote, no secret, end quote, to Lebanon's political parties. Meanwhile, Lebanon's Arabic language Al-Jumhuriyah daily newspaper, citing anonymous sources, okay, what the hell ever. Anyway, citing unnamed sources close to Hariri, reported on Thursday that all political parties in the country were aware of this decision, which was being deliberated. The decision was made in Lebanon. There is no need to act surprisingly, the sources said. They noted that Hariri didn't insist on staying in power, but he would not hesitate to assume responsibility if reappointed PM. Also in bold, France urges Lebanese authorities to accelerate government formation. Separately, France's Foreign Minister, Jean-Yves Le Drian, butchered that, urged Lebanese officials to expedite the formation of the government. Following the resignation of Saad Hariri, it's essential for the future of Lebanon to accelerate the formation of a government that can proceed with the necessary reforms the country needs, Le Drian said in a statement released on Thursday. He added that the Lebanese citizens' right for peaceful demonstrations must be preserved. Hariri submitted his resignation to President Michel Aoun on Tuesday. Under the constitution, Hariri's cabinet would stay on in a caretaker capacity until a new government is formed. For 13 days, Lebanese from across the country's sectarian and political divides had been pouring onto the streets and blocking major roads to call for the resignation of the government and for the ruling elite to be held accountable for decades of corruption. The protest started on October 17th when the government proposed imposing a tax on VoIP services along with additional austerity measures. Salameh on Monday dismissed reports that Lebanon's economy would collapse in a matter of days in the wake of anti-government protests. I'm not saying that we're going to have a collapse in a matter of days, but I'm saying that we need to have a solution in a matter of days to regain confidence and avoid collapse in the future, Salameh said in an interview with CNN. The senior Lebanese monetary figure underlined that a, quote, solution, end quote, to the crisis is needed within days in order to restore confidence and avoid a collapse. Growth in Lebanon has plummeted in the wake of endless political strife and deadlocks and an economic crisis in recent years. The country hosts 1.5 million Syrian refugees, and the president is often blamed for putting pressure on the already struggling economy. Unemployment stands at more than 20% according to official figures, and the Lebanese Finance Ministry says that the national debt is hovering around $85 billion, which accounts for more than 150% of the gross domestic product. Successive governments have failed to address a waste management crisis or improve the electricity grid, which is plagued by daily power cuts. So the US is getting the blame for all this shit. France is apparently calling for the Lebanese to hurry up and sort out government. But whoever gets installed is going to have their work cut out. So that's really pretty much it. The issue is still continuing. The West is getting blamed for it, and considering how long the issues have been going on politically with regards to the West and the Middle East, a bit too long, one would say. But anyway, I'm done on Lebanon. We're going to talk about good old Pakistan. The first article here is from Press TV once again. This time though, Pakistani traders shut down businesses over IMF driven taxation. Well, there's a constant for you. Taxation, IMF, debt. It just seems like a lazy copy and paste scenario, to be honest with you. That's all you literally, well, all I've literally been seeing when it comes to protests. What's been happening over the what's been happening? Protests. Why is that, one will ask? Well, it's due to IMF shit. Like what? Debt, austerity, taxes. Here comes a face plant. Oh, god damn it. Anyway, so basically protesting the same shit from what I'm seeing here. As a matter of fact, you can just pause the thingy or video if you want to read the whole article here. So, yeah, Pakistan's got the same shit to deal with. Imran Khan's in deep shit too, as his government is in deep trouble as well. Also, speaking of this, I'm going to play this video for you. So let me just hide my thingy for 1 second. Yeah, I'll switch it off. Let's play this video for now.
Almost all business activities in Pakistani capital Islamabad came to a halt after traders protested against the government's drive to increase taxes. So was the case elsewhere in the country. Pakistani businessmen are mainly angry at measures aimed at meeting the demands of the International Monetary Fund to boost tax revenues and stabilize the public finances. The country secured a $6 billion loan from the IMF early this year to ease the foreign debt obligations.
We
cannot go into massive documentation of our every business transaction. It is a very technical and complicated process. A common semi-educated trader cannot record everyday transactions. The economy is shrinking because of heavy taxation. The economy cannot be fixed with such policies.
The government resorted to heavy taxation in many sectors. Prime Minister Imran Khan's government has vowed not to compromise on the tax reforms aimed at reducing dependency on foreign loans. At least two-thirds of Pakistan's economy remains undocumented, which has led every government to resort to excessive indirect taxation. The new government's measures have resulted in price hike, which is one of the leading reasons behind a long march the opposition parties have organized from different parts of the country towards capital Islamabad. Tens of thousands of people from different parts of Pakistan are on their way to hold a sit-in protest in Islamabad to pressurize Prime Minister Imran Khan to resign for compromising country's economic sovereignty by conceding to tough IMF conditions, which has led to skyrocketing prices. Many believe that if traders join opposition's protest, it would be one of the toughest challenges Prime Minister Imran Khan's government has faced since coming into power last year.
At this time, the traders and the political parties, if they join hands against the government, it will be a huge crisis for this government. And that has been a major source of worry for the government, because the government thinks that if huge number of people come to Islamabad, they will cripple the capital, they will create problems.
The shutdown is expected to continue until Thursday, and the opposition's long march is scheduled to reach Islamabad on Friday. Javed Rana, Press TV, Islamabad.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. So, basically, they want Imran Khan gone, well, the protesters, because apparently over the IMF imposed demands, which are too tough, naturally. So no surprises there. Al-Jazeera has also been covering the anti-government protests as well, calling for Imran Khan to take the L and walk away from politics. Well, basically, excuse me. So, yeah. You got protesters apparently saying that Imran Khan's not doing enough, and they also are accusing him of election rigging as well, which is absolutely bizarre. But the complaints with here and Lebanon and elsewhere, pretty much the same thing. Austerity measures, adversity with silly taxes, and always indebted to either one monetary organisation or another. Gee, what a freaking surprise, said no one ever. Next one, the Economic Times has also written an article on that situation. But before I carry on, I would like to thank editors for actually pointing me in this direction with regards to Pakistan. I actually didn't know about it until today, well, yesterday I should say. So, yeah, thanks to him, and thanks to Barbara Ham for what's happened in Lebanon, and what's led to Saad Hariri resigning, basically. But anyway, marching on, I'll read this article. It's only not even a mass scrolls long, really. Azadi or Freedom March postponed in Islamabad for one day due to Lahore train tragedy. There's a teaser for you. Right-wing Jamiat Ulema-e Islam Fazi, JUI-F, Chief Maulana Fazlur Rahman, launched the Azadi March along with leaders of other opposition parties on October 27th from the southern Sindh province to arrive in Islamabad on October 31st, demanding Khan to basically get the fuck out. So, a protest rally led by an influential Pakistani cleric against PM Imran Khan was postponed for a day on Thursday in the wake of the tragic Lahore train inferno that killed at least 74 people. Right-wing Jamiat Ulema-e Islam Fazi, JUI-F, Chief Maulana Fazlur Rahman launched the Azadi March along with leaders of other opposition parties on October 27th from the southern Sindh province to arrive in Islamabad on October 31st, demanding Khan's resignation, accusing him of rigging the 2018 general elections. Refrain also accused the PM of mismanagement of economy, inefficiency and bad governance that has increased hardships of common people. Senior JUIF leader Akram Durrani said the rally in Islamabad will now start after the Jummah Friday prayers, and senior opposition leaders will address it. The Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, PMLN leader Ahsan Iqbal said that opposition parties decided to postpone the rally in Islamabad due to the tragic train fire. However, the protesters taking part in the Azadi March will continue their journey and will try to reach the capital by tonight, the JUIF leader said. Khan and his party has ruled out his resignation, but showed readiness to accept any other demand to improve election system or the system of governance. More destabilization, said a few folks who I've conversed with. And with the way things are going, especially with Pakistan and India, it wouldn't surprise me if all this does play a part in Pakistan becoming weak against India. But that's just a few people's opinions, in all honesty, or rather their takes. But like I said, where there's war, there's always shit that's bound to happen. Unpredictable shit, I may add. Oh, jeez, I haven't sworn this much in ages. Especially on a video. Jeez. Alright, speaking of the Lahore train tragedy, yeah, over 70 people have been killed off in this sad event, really. All because, well, people bringing the cooking equipment to cook stuff has exacerbated this issue. Turned what was a peaceful train ride into a horrible tragedy of sorts. Yikes. Oh. Well, inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. To God we belong and to him we shall return. That's the only thing I can say to the victims here. Literally all of them are, yeah. But I'll just read this whole article while I'm here. So, at least 74 people have died in a train travelling between the Pakistani cities of Karachi and Rawalpindi. It caught fire in the middle of its journey. Railways Minister Sheikh Rashid Ahmed said that the fire started when a gas cylinder, which passengers were using to cook breakfast on board, exploded. The huge blaze spread to at least 3 carriages. Oh boy, that's bad. According to officials citing local media, many victims died as they tried to jump off the burning train. Under 40 people were injured, but officials say that the number of victims may still rise. BBC Urdu's Farhad Javed, who visited hospitals where victims were being treated, said that many patients were too traumatized to speak. Survivor Shahid Imran told the BBC that he realised that a fire had broken out when he heard screaming. He pushed his wife out of the window and then jumped after her. Mr. Imran was slightly hurt in the fall from the moving train, but his wife suffered severe head injuries. Ouch. Another survivor told the BBC that they pulled the emergency chain to get the train to stop, but it didn't slow down. Doctors are treating folks for burns, broken limbs and head injuries, our correspondent said. Well, BBC's correspondent said. BBC then says, what's happened? The accident happened in the town of Rahim Yar Khan in the south of Punjab province. Many passengers were pilgrims heading to Rawalpindi near Lahore for one of Pakistan's largest annual religious congregations, organised by the Tablighi Jamaat, Sunni Muslim missionary movement. Well, that's something that's familiar to me, but anyway, moving swiftly on. 3 carriages were set alight, officials said, with 54 people in the 11th carriage and 78 each in carriages 12 and 13. Most of these passengers were on their way to the religious festival or event. Muhammad Ramzan, who was on board, told BBC Urdu some pilgrims were making tea when the gas cylinder exploded. He jumped from the train to safety. Survivor Jamshed Patan told BBC Urdu he was in carriage 11 when they realised that there was a fire, and that he had broken out just after they finished the morning prayers. I'm guessing Fajr, so. But anyway, there was chaos everywhere, he said. It was very difficult for us to get out and save ourselves. Another man who gave his name as Ghaffar said that he could smell something in the night, but no one paid attention. He and his friends helped rush injured passengers to hospital. I have no words to explain what we saw, he said. The rescue teams got there very late, and the district deputy commissioner Jamil Ahmed said that some of the victims had suffered such severe burns that they could not be identified without DNA testing. Evidence is now being collected at the scene and sent off for forensic tests, an anonymous official told BBC Urdu. The cause was 2 cooking stoves blew up. They had cooking oil which added fuel to the fire, not just proverbially but literally as well. Sheikh Rashid Ahmed said, we chose some words here, but anyway, passengers bringing stoves onto trains in order to cook meals on long journeys was a common issue, the minister said. Though it is common to carry food on board, gas cylinders are banned. Yeah, pretty obvious as to why they actually are banned, but still, it didn't stop it from happening, I'm afraid. But other reports from the scene suggest that electrical issues could have been the cause. Several survivors have reportedly said that they believed a short circuit on board may have been to blame. Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, said that he was deeply saddened by the terrible tragedy, adding that he had ordered an immediate inquiry into the cause of the fire. After an earlier suspension in the wake of the blaze, the Railways Minister said that services had now been restored. And train travel is one of the most popular means of transport in Pakistan, particularly amongst middle and lower income groups. Built by the British during pre-partition era, the railway tracks covered the length of the country. However, while some of the upscale trains have dedicated dining carriages, most of them are in poor condition and have barely functioning amenities. Therefore, passengers choose to bring things along with them or refresh themselves where the trains stop. They also take advantage of the fact that inspection is more relaxed than at airports, bringing banned items like cooking stoves and oil canisters to keep themselves sustained during the long hours on board. This particular service, Tezgam, is one of the oldest and most popular, travelling between Karachi in the south and Rawalpindi in the north. The journey takes more than 25 hours, with each of its carriages boating space for somewhere between 60 to 80 passengers on bunk beds. Tickets cost between 1,500 Pakistani rupees, which is $960, $9.60, or some £40, and 5,000 rupees, $32 or £24.80, depending on the class. This is Pakistan's worst rail disaster in over a decade, but the country has a history of fatal railway accidents. You think they'd learn from this? But anyway, moving swiftly on, casualty figures are often high because trains are packed with far greater numbers of passengers than they were designed for. In July, 11 people died in an accident, with 4 dying in another accident in September. And in 2007, at least 56 people were killed, with more than 120 injured in the crash near Mehrapur. And in 2005, more than 130 people were killed when 3 trains collided in Sindh province, in one of the country's worst train disasters. Pakistan, please sort your fucking trains out, will you please? Just sort your trains out, man. And on top of that, have some safety procedures in place and implement them properly. Could do that. That's the least it should do. But moving on, Chinese Asians talking about the Pakistan protests all over again. Basically the same as the previous articles I've shown, but obviously reworded slightly differently, probably adding a few details. You can read them in your own time, because A, time constraints, and B, I'm struggling to actually read out articles. So here's the show notes if you want to take a look at them, and just take a note of these links and read those articles in your own time. Excuse me. Last Pakistan article with regards to Imran Khan and the issues. Pakistan's Imran Khan faces first major challenge to leadership. Press TV's article, same as every other article here, in terms of what's being talked about here, but with a slight difference. Well, I say slight difference, but here's what's pretty hilarious though. Fazlur Rahman has had issues with Imran Khan, and Rahman's bad blood with Khan runs deep. Okay, I've mentioned that. Khan ran on an anti-corruption agenda in 2018 and called out, quote, Maulana Diesel, as he dubbed him. How the Jeez. Well, that's pretty romantic, I'm sure. Anyway, carry on. Called out Maulana Diesel, as he dubbed him, for his alleged participation in graft involving fuel licenses. Rahman, in turn, referred to Imran Khan, the former World Cup winning cricketer, as the Jew. Well, citing his first marriage to Jemima Khan, Nee Goldsmith, along with incoherent anti-Semitic conspiracies. Fucking hell. Jeez. That's... Well, we've reached kindergarten lunacy there. The Jew. What the fuck? Well, oy vey. Oy vey indeed. Anyway, enough of me poking fun at this nonsense. Well, by nonsense, I mean the name calling here. But anyway, just in case, I don't want anyone to misconstrue what I'm laughing at, so... But it sucks that Pakistan's going through this crap, especially what I'm going to show next. And what a few people who I've conversed with think about the situation, saying that there might be further issues, and Pakistan just getting weakened to the point that it can't deal with India, especially on the Kashmir. Yeah. India formally divides Kashmir to tighten grip over the Muslim majority region. Well, I've also covered this, and for some reason I did not put this in my show notes. Crap. Absolute crap. But anyway, you know what? Shit. You're going to have to excuse me. This is not me being well prepared. So, you're going to have to deal with me here. What the hell? No. Oh! Yeah. This is what happens when you forget something. Or you think you're well prepared, but you end up forgetting something. Now, I've actually written a little blog post, an article. Yeah, this is this is poor on my part, but bugger off. There we go. So yeah, there's something I added to the show notes. But anyway, I've written an article not too long ago. Not too long ago, about what's happening with Jammu and Kashmir, and India basically went batshit crazy during the time I've written this article. So they had a lot. Basically, you can just read the article in your own time. But the truth of the matter is, India wanted to tighten its grip, and have basically done it here. So that's what the previous article I've written in August basically says. And the BBC's written a brief rundown as to what happened with regards to India and Pakistan over Kashmir throughout the decades. So, excuse me, as I said, you can read this in your own time. As for this Press TV article, I'll read that to you. So, India has formally divided the Muslim majority region of Kashmir into two new federally administered territories, aiming to tighten its grip on the restive Himalayan valley. Under the new arrangement, the state was formally taken on Thursday under direct federal control and split into the territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, which borders China. Speaking in his home state of Gujarat, Prime Minister Narendra Modi hailed what he called a bright future for the blood-soaked Himalayan region. Kashmir was the only place where terrorism killed around 40,000 people in the last 3 decades. So many mothers lost their sons, and for how long? Could have just kept watching the innocents die, Modi said. We're happy that Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh are moving towards a new future from today onwards. Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir today are taking steps for their bright future, he added. Amid tight security, low-key ceremonies were held in Srinagar and Leh, the region's main cities, to have 2 new lieutenant governors sworn into office. The move also removes Kashmiri's exclusive land rights, allowing people from elsewhere to buy property, a point which is covered in this article here. Shameless plug of the year, probably, but anyway, carrying on. Allowing people from elsewhere to buy property. Then, locals suspect that this is part of Modi's aim to bring demographic change to the region. Okay. Local authorities in Kashmir deployed tens of thousands of government forces and issued a high alert for attacks and anti-India protests. Paramilitary groups, troops and police in bulletproof gear patrolled streets in the densely populated old quarters of the main city of Srinagar and other towns across the volatile region. On August the 5th, India scrapped the semi-autonomy of its part of Kashmir, sparking a new wave of tensions over the region. In the lead up to the move, India sent thousands of additional troops to said region, imposed a crippling curfew, shut down telecommunications and the internet, and arrested political leaders. Almost 2 months after the surprise move, hundreds of Kashmiri politicians and others remain in detention, mostly without charge. And in total, several thousand people were locked up, including children as young as 9, but most of them were subsequently released. There have also been allegations of torture by Indian troops, something the government denies, and access to around half of mobile phones were only restored on October the 14th, but the internet remains cut for the valley's more than 7 million people. On Tuesday, the UN High Commission for Human Rights in Geneva said that it is extremely concerned about this situation, and we urge the Indian authorities to unlock the situation and fully restore the rights that are currently being denied, it said. The August 5th controversial action against Pakistan, which controls parts of Kashmir, and soured Pakistan-India relations. China also holds a thinly populated high-altitude area of Kashmir and has a long-standing dispute over the border with India. In August 1947, the British Raj was dismantled, with the subcontinent divided into 2 independent states, Hindu-majority India and the Muslim-majority Pakistan. Kashmir has been split between India and Pakistan since their partition in 1947. Both countries claim all of Kashmir and have fought 3 wars in the process over the territory. Millions were uprooted in one of the largest mass migrations in history, with experts estimated at least 1 million died in the communal violence unleashed by partition that continues to haunt the subcontinent to this day. Yeah. So India's basically, in this article, Press TV reports that Indians have rubber stamped the partitioning of Kashmir to allow India to basically assert its dominance of the region. China also has a small partition there, and India and China have having issues in that. Although Pakistan and India are the main forces in terms of the dispute, though China are basically somewhat sitting in the background. And for the sake of full disclosure, China has been supporting Pakistan in its affairs, basically, especially when it comes to Kashmir. So, take that as what you will, especially what's happened with US and China, and how that shitstorm's been happening, basically. And then on a slightly off-topic note, you also had the Hong Kong issues going on there, and then the Activision Blizzard fiasco. NBA also got their hands dirty in the process with regards to the whole situation. So there's a lot of wars that are linked, a lot of issues that are being linked together, especially with China, Hong Kong. Just going slightly off topic, but still somewhat related to this, because, like I said, China and Pakistan are close together as of now, especially on Kashmir. But anyway, before I head off, I would like to give a hat tip to someone on Facebook named Nadeem Khan, because he's actually posted a Facebook post stating that India's tightened its grip on Kashmir. So I had to look it up, and I found this article naturally. So yeah, a lot of political batshittery has been happening. What a surprise. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you take a note of the show notes and the article links, excuse me. See, my mind's gone blank. It's actually 3 o'clock now. But before, I would also like to thank Aunt Bibi and Eddie Tours for helping me out with, or rather giving me hat tips to Lebanon in terms of what's been happening, and Pakistan. And obviously Nadeem Khan for his put a post on India tightening its grip on Kashmir, like I said. But as always, thank you very much for sticking by, and that's all I've got to say now. Signing out, folks.